This little cutie is my original free pattern for a cat with big paws and a bendable tail. It's by far my most popular pattern. So in addition to this free pattern, available on my site and on Ravelry, you can watch this video tutorial. Links to everything are in the description box. In part 1, we'll cover the creation of the head, adding the eyes, and embroidering the face. I'm Susie Diaz, and together with Miguel Guerra, we create comics and webcomics at 7robots.com. I also love creating handmade toys, and crochet makes it easy. I'll share my patterns here so you can follow me step by step. Welcome to Parasol Geek, Crochet Edition.
Bisous, bisous!
To make this cat, I'm using a 3mm hook and some DK weight yarn. My original pattern on my website uses a 5mm hook and matching yarn. We'll start by creating a magic ring. Wrap the yarn like so around your index and middle fingers to create an X. With the hook, go under the first strand, hook the second strand, pull it under the first and twist. Now yarn over and pull the hook through the first loop on your hook. And there you go, you have a magic ring. Single crochet 6 times into the magic ring. Okay, so that's our last single crochet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Pull the yarn tail to close the magic ring and you get a lovely little circle. Now we're going to start round 2. You're going to insert your hook into the first single crochet from round 1 and add 2 single crochets. So for round 2, we're going to single crochet twice in each stitch around. Now here's our second stitch, and we're going to insert 1 single crochet. And now our second single crochet in the same stitch. So now we have 4 stitches. Do that again, adding 2 single crochets in the same stitch, and I'll meet you at the end. At the end of round 2, your stitch count is 12. For round 3, our pattern is to alternate between an increase or 2 single crochets in the same stitch and then 1 single crochet. So we'll do an increase followed by 1 single crochet in each stitch around. Again, that's 1 single crochet and a second single crochet in the same stitch, which is an increase, followed by 1 single crochet in the next stitch. 1 single crochet, 2 single crochets in the same stitch, and then 1 single crochet in the following stitch. Do this all the way around, and I'll meet you at the end. Your total stitch count at the end of round 3 is 18. Round 4 is very similar to round 3, except here the pattern is an increase in the first stitch, followed by 2 single crochets. So that's 2 single crochets in your first stitch, and I highly recommend adding a marker so you don't lose your place. You can use anything for this, a piece of yarn, a string, or I like to use a little plastic safety pin. So you insert that into your first stitch. As I mentioned, I've already added an increase in the first stitch. And now we're going to add 1 single crochet, 1 single crochet. So we'll continue to do this all the way around, and I'll meet you at the end. Here we are for our last increase, followed by 2 single crochets. Your total stitch count at the end of round 4 is 24. All right, we're doing great now. We're at round 5. Here the pattern is to alternate between an increase and 3 single crochets. So add your increase in the first stitch, and don't forget to add your marker so you don't lose your place. Now we're going to add 3 single crochets and do this all the way around, and I'll meet you at the end. And here we're at the end of round 5, and we're adding our last increase followed by 3 single crochets. The total stitch count at the end of round 5 is 30. Here the pattern is to add an increase in the first stitch and then 4 single crochets. So we'll add our first increase, single crochet 1 and 2 in the same stitch, and add your marker so you don't lose your place, followed by 4 single crochets. So do this all the way around, and I'll meet you at the end. Here we are for our last increase, followed by 4 single crochets, and the total stitch count at the end of round 6 is now 36. From round 7 until round 13, you will add 1 single crochet in each stitch around. Continue to single crochet in each stitch around, and I'll come back at the end of round 7. Once you begin your rounds of single crochets, I like to use a piece of yarn as my marker so I don't have to remove it at the end of each round. This is the beginning of round 8, and you're going to continue to single crochet all the way around until things start to look a little different. We'll start to see this shape, and we can count all the way up to round 13. And now we're going to start something a little bit different. In round 14, we're going to have our first invisible decrease. With the 2 front loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 1, yarn over, and pull through both loops on your hook. That's an invisible decrease. Now don't forget to add a stitch marker, and then we can continue with the rest of our pattern. 1 invisible decrease that we just completed, and now 4 single crochets. Okay, just to be sure, we'll watch it one more time. Put the next 2 front loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 1 loop, yarn over, and pull through both. There's your invisible decrease. And for this round, we now have 4 single crochets. Continue this pattern all the way around, and I'll meet you at the end. Now we've reached the end of round 14. with our last invisible decrease followed by 4 single crochets. The stitch count at the end of round 14 is 30. Dum-da-da-dum! It's time to add the eyes. Before adding the eyes, find the middle. And you can count to be exact or just eyeball it. Now count down 10 rounds from the top. Okay, now go across 4 stitches. So count 4 stitches to one side and insert an 8mm safety button or any button that you have. This is optional. You can even use yarn to make an eye, anything you like. Now we'll add the back of the eye and secure it in place. Okay, now we're going to count 9 stitches across. So in that 9th stitch, we're going to add the other 8mm safety button. Okay, just pull it through the space and add the back. Please remember to like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Now we're going to continue to decrease until the end. And in this way, there's symmetry. We had increases, even numbers, and now decreases. For round 15, we will add 1 invisible decrease. And I'm going to put in my stitch marker now just so I don't lose my place. And this is followed by 3 single crochets. That is 1 invisible decrease followed by 3 single crochets. Continue this pattern and I'll meet you at the end. And now we're at the end of round 15, our last invisible decrease, followed by 3 single crochets, and our total stitch count is now 24. Now is a good time to check your work, see how you like it. If you want to change the eye spacing, if maybe you miscounted something, you can always undo it and do it again. That's what I love about crochet. If everything looks good, you can continue. This is round 16, and the pattern is an invisible decrease followed by 2 single crochets. Repeat this pattern all the way around, and I'll meet you at the end. Okay, now at the end of round 16, it's our last invisible decrease, followed by 2 single crochets. At the end of round 16, the stitch count is 18. Take another step back, review our work, see if we like it. If everything is fine, you're happy, you can remove the stitch marker and then add it to the loop so nothing becomes unraveled. And now it's actually time to add some stuffing. Now we're not going to stuff the entire thing from top to bottom. We're going to fill it, let's say 80%. Bravo, you've reached round 17. Here, the pattern is 1 invisible decrease and 1 single crochet. Here's our first invisible decrease. Add your stitch marker. Followed by 1 single crochet. Continue that all the way around. 1 invisible decrease, and 1 single crochet, and I'll meet you at the end. Now we're down to our last set of stitches. 1 invisible decrease, followed by 1 single crochet. At the end of round 17, your stitch count is 12. Now that we're nearly at the end, it's time to add more stuffing. And the perfect tool to do this is a pencil with no eraser. Even a chopstick actually works pretty well, but this is my favorite. Make sure the head is firm so that when we sew it to the body, it will stand up straight. We want our little cat to hold her head up high. All right, we're on the final round, and here we will do an invisible decrease all the way around. So you get 2 stitches together, front loops only. If you'd like to see this done more slowly, rewind and watch round 14. And it can get a little difficult at the very end because everything's very close together. Just make sure you use your finger to push down the stuffing so it doesn't interfere. I'm going to add my last invisible decrease. And at the end of round 18, the stitch count is 6. Fantastic, you're all done. You've just completed a head with eyes. You can use this to create anything, any animal, any doll. Here, it's going to be our cat. Now it's time to add a little individuality to our cat and embroider the face. I'm not very good at embroidery, but here we'll create a nose, a mouth, and whiskers. Once you have your embroidery floss on the needle, count 3 stitches from the eye towards the middle. And that's where you're going to insert your first stitch, and it's 1 round below the eye. Now count 3 stitches across. That's how wide the nose will be. And to create a triangle, we're going to insert the needle 1 round down. There we go. So that's the goal here, is to make a tiny little triangle. And first I start with the outline, and then I fill it in. And yes, I do sometimes make mistakes and I have to cut away the embroidery floss and start again. But that's the great thing about crochet. Even when you make mistakes, either unravel it, or in the case of embroidery, you might have to cut it free, but in the end, it will be exactly the way you want it, more or less. Now that the outline is complete, we're going to fill in the center and try to use each stitch across as close as you can to the previous stitch until it's filled in. And I try to use long stitches just so I have less work to do, honestly. So fill in the spaces as much as you can until you have a nice little black triangle. To save time, I didn't show all of my stitches, but you get the idea. Try your best to fill in the space. And here, this is going to be my last stitch. And there you go. I'm just directing it with my thumb. The center line that goes between the nose and the mouth should be 2 rounds. And then you create a tiny little mouth. So exit with your embroidery floss on one side. Count so it's even on the opposite side. And then bring your needle in the same stitch where the tip of the nose is, the exact same stitch. Getting a little tangled up. I'm going to put my needle back under, and now I'm going to insert the needle again in the same stitch. But first I want to make sure I like the smile, because I can undo this, of course. But I think I like where it is, it's cute. So I will insert my needle again in the same stitch, and I will exit where my first stitch went in, or I should say my first tail went in. Then I'll pull that tight and just use my fingers to put the yarn where I like it. Okay, so that's pretty good. You can make a wider smile or a tiny smile or no smile. Everything is up to you. So if it looks good and you're happy, tie a knot. I'm going to cut the longer yarn tail just so both are the same size. And I'll put them through my yarn needle. Now we'll hide the ends. So the needle will go into the same stitch where the yarn tails are. Exit anywhere you like, it doesn't matter. Pull it tight and you hide the knot. And there's your face. The last thing left to do is cut the yarn tails. Et voila. You don't even see them and you have your face. Now we have our nose and our mouth, and we're going to add 3 whiskers on each side, on each cheek, if you will. So insert your yarn needle with the embroidery floss anywhere, it doesn't matter where, somewhere out of the way. And we're going to do the first 2 whiskers 4 stitches across. And one will be on an up angle like that. So I went 2 rounds up. The second will also be 4 stitches across, but 1 round up. So it's still on a little bit of an incline. Each whisker begins directly below the previous whisker. I'm not skipping a round. It's 1 round, the next round for the middle, the next round for the bottom. Now remember, this is your cat and your creation, so you can get as creative as you like. Make the whiskers different sizes, different colors, have no whiskers, add eyebrows. The sky's the limit. So have fun with this. It does not have to look like mine. It could be a guide or exactly, or you, I'm sure, could make it even better. Now it's time to add the whiskers to the other side of the face. And be careful to create a mirror image. You want each whisker to begin and end on the same round in the same stitch. We're just going to repeat the same process. Once we have our first stitch in place, we're going to count 4 stitches across and 2 rounds up for the first whisker. And then we're going to take a look at it, make sure everything is symmetrical. And in the middle stitch, the second whisker, it's also going to be 4 stitches long, but just 1 round up. And then you prepare yourself for your third or last whisker at the bottom. And this one will be 3 stitches long. By whatever means you can, squish the head, anything at all, try to get your needle to exit from the same space where you have the original yarn tail. This is a good time to reassess your work, see how you like it. Maybe pull some of the yarn a little tighter. Move it around with your fingers. If you don't like it, this is a great time to pull it all out and start again. But if things are looking pretty good and you're happy with it, you can tie your knot. And I'm going to cut the longer yarn tail to make them even. And I'll feed the ends onto my yarn needle. It's always the same process for everything. And now we'll hide our yarn tails. Insert the needle into the same space. Exit anywhere you like. Pull it through. Now you can cut off those yarn tails and everything is hidden inside the head. Congratulations, you just created your cat-tastic face. Please join me for part 2, where we will create the perfect little ears. We'll embroider them and we'll sew them in place.
Please like and subscribe.
Life is short, so let's create something good. C'est parti!